Hey everybody, I'm Chris Bogue.
And I'm Tom Boston.
And today we are talking about comedy. We're talking about what you think is funny. We're going deep on the creative process. So we've got a question on screen. Go ahead, leave a comment. Let us know how you feel about puns. Do you like them? Do you not like them? And we're going to get this started. So here we go. First, a word from our sponsors. Hi, my name is Dr. Funkenstein. You know, sales professionals and doctors have more in common than you'd think. For one, they both need the right tools to get the job done. That's why I prescribe all my patients TLDV. TLDV is the AI meetings assistant. It works with all the programs that your team uses, like Microsoft Teams, Google Meets, and Zoom, compiling AI summaries to keep you up to date on what's really important. It even updates with Salesforce, HubSpot, and other CRMs. Try it today at tldv.io, and I promise you'll hit your quota immediately.
Dr. Funkenstein is not a doctor, nor has he ever claimed to be a doctor. Statements made by Dr. Funkenstein are protected by the First Amendment of the United States and do not reflect the opinions of tldv.io or Chris Bogue Communications, LLC. Guarantees made by Dr. Funkenstein are purely suggestive and should not be taken as medical advice under any circumstances. Similarities between medical professionals and sales professionals may have been exaggerated for dramatic effect. Quote attainment claims are based on incomplete data and subject to change as of the end of this sentence. Talk to your sales manager to learn if an AI assistant is right for you, or just go to tldv.io and do whatever you want, because you're an adult.
Chris Sells His Soul is filmed in front of a live streaming audience, so don't forget to comment throughout the show. The show's about to get started, so grab yourself 2 hearty buckets of popcorn and get ready for a conversation about how to monetize your creative skills. Now it's time for a message from today's sponsor.
Look, I'm a busy dad, so when a salesperson reaches out pitching me, I just say no thanks, explode into hysterical abusive rage, and get back to my day. But then I learned about Pitchfire. They have a much better way. Instead of screaming and getting angry, I actually get paid to respond to salespeople. Thanks, Pitchfire. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Your Kind of Funny with Tom Boston. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And as every guest of anything ever says, it's a pleasure to be here. That's what you have to say, don't you? It's a pleasure to be here.
You don't have to say anything. The people came here to watch you give me the business. So if you want to say it's not a pleasure to be here, what am I going to do?
Well, it is. Of course it is. And, you know, here it's 6 o'clock in the UK on a Friday. The sun is shining and I've been looking forward to this conversation. So it is genuinely a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Well, glad to have you here. Tom, real quick, do you want to just let our audience know where they can follow you, like where you hang out online?
Yes, the best place to catch me is LinkedIn. There are not a lot of bald blokes called Tom Boston with a ginger beard, so I'm not difficult to find. So yeah, you can I think you can scan the QR code to find me as well on LinkedIn. But yeah, that's my home.
Excellent. And if you don't know me, my name is Chris Bogue. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I make mercifully short video content. I coach people to go out there on video as the best version of themselves. And if you like this show, if you want more comedy and more fun video content, go ahead and click my bell on LinkedIn. Follow me there. I make new content all the time. And Tom, I'm really excited to have you here today because you and I have chosen a very interesting path. We are out here doing sketch comedy on LinkedIn. And that's something very few people do. So today, this is going to be an exploration of how you became what you are today, where you draw your inspiration from. I've got a strange and varied backstory on how I got into comedy. So I'm excited to kind of just connect with you on this. And audience, if you're watching this, jump in and leave a comment. We were having some problems with Restream today, so let's make sure this is actually being aired. So go ahead, drop a comment. Let us know, how would you describe your comedic style? You know, we had some fun earlier this week fighting about puns. I don't like puns. Tom's a big fan. Tom, how would you?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question to kind of kick off with. I like to think it's built in like realism, right? You know what's actually happening to salespeople. Never really even thought I was doing sketch comedy. You know, just started to create video content that hopefully shone a light on what it's like for salespeople selling on a daily basis. So yeah, I'd like to say I describe it as true, right? As real.
I mean, like, yes and no, right? So let's go ahead. So I'm going to bring up a quote that. So one thing I want to get in here, and one reason why I'm really happy to have you on, is this idea that comedy is pain. You know, you say it's real. You're doing real comedy, but obviously, if somebody watches your comedy, it's full of absurdity. You know, I like your comedy because oftentimes the funniest thing you can do is just put characters into an impossible situation where there's just absolutely nothing they can do to fail or nothing they can do to succeed. And the audience watches and laughs because they're just happy that it's not them, you know? So it's like, I think the world of sales, the world of LinkedIn is ripe for comedy. And I'm frankly surprised I don't see more comedians doing stuff here. But let's talk about, like, how did you start doing this in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to how it all started, it was to, I guess, make a bit of a name for myself as a salesperson, right? I was kind of unknown. I think that's the best way to describe it in the space. I was just another sales guy, and I thought, what can I do to set myself out from the pack? So in terms of how, I mean, it was as simple as grabbing a mobile phone and starting to create video content. And again, it wasn't sketch comedy, right? It was me as Tom, just kind of vlogging, right? On my way to work, it was me recording myself and hello everyone, I'm doing this today. That content didn't do very well, so I started to experiment with humor, bringing some, again, real life scenarios into video content. That started to do well, so it morphed into, let's say, sketch comedy. And yes, it's absurd. There are, you know, there are elements of the characters that are turned up to the max, but I like to think it is rooted in truth, right? Hopefully, people can watch the content and go, "Oh yeah, I've met someone a bit like that," or "I had a meet with a bit like that."
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. So, where did you learn how to do this stuff? Like, were you ever performing any sort of theater or stand up, or like, what was it like? Because most people don't just start making comedy. You know, usually there's some sort of intro to it earlier in life. So yeah, was this all on video after LinkedIn, or was there a part of you that was performing in a life earlier?
Yeah, I mean, so at school, drama was the only thing that I was good at. It was the only thing I would do really well in. So the logical step was to continue that, and I took that all the way through to university and did a drama degree. Now, when you leave university with a drama degree, your options are a little bit limited, and then I ended up in retail and, you know, messed around with a podcast with a friend, tried a little bit of YouTube, didn't really work out for me. So I got a job in sales. and put my creativity away. Right. And I thought that's the end. I tried, and now I'm a salesperson. And it was only when I joined Sales Loft where we were encouraged to use our skills and our creativity and make a noise on the platform of LinkedIn, because that's where we wanted to shout about, right? In 2019, when Sales Loft launched in EMEA, let's make some noise. I kind of thought, okay, maybe that creativity that I put away in a box and I thought was dead, maybe I could try that again, right? So some of those skills that I picked up when I tried YouTube all those years ago, when I tried to do podcasting, when I was a radio host, right? So I hosted a breakfast show on a very, very small radio station. I must make that clear, in the north of England. And like I said, I'd sort of given up on comedy, if you like. But weirdly, B2B sales was the place where the comedy kind of came back into my life. So it's kind of a strange full circle moment.
You know, I actually don't think that's strange at all. And you saying that, everything you just said is actually something I've heard dozens of times. And this is actually, so I'm out here and I'm kind of scratching a similar itch as you, whereas I am out doing lots of video things. I am out doing creative things on LinkedIn because when I started doing it, I started about 2021. There was not a lot of that stuff happening. So I started putting stuff out there, started getting inbound leads, started getting coaching clients, started getting all that good stuff, sponsored content, influencer deals, all that stuff. And people started saying to me, they'd be like, oh, okay, well, maybe this works for you because you know how to do all this, comedy stuff. But like, that's not my sales team. My sales team doesn't know how to do that. And to that, I say, there is one of me at every company. And like, even looking at me, I would say, no offense to you, Tom, but I would say like, Tom Boston is the Sales Loft version of Chris Bogue. Like, every company, I don't care what company you have, they have a bearded guy who is funny, who does comedy stuff somehow. Like, every team's got one. Mm-hmm. And if they don't have that, they have actors and dancers and teachers and TikTokers and all these people who have done all these performances all throughout their lives, and they put it in the closet. They put it underneath the bed. They tuck it away because now they've got the serious B2B job and a family to support, and they put all that away. And I tell them like, hey, those talents are still there. The ability to connect with an audience is not something that you've forgotten. All you need to do is start doing stuff regularly, and all those skills are going to come back. It's going to be just like riding a bike, So was there a period where you stopped? Did you pretty much, have you always had some sort of creative outlet and you just kind of swap it out for one another? Or did you really have to dust off the old skills and come back to something that you really had stopped doing for years before you were making video content?
There was certainly a little bit of dusting off, and what I'd never done is everything at the same time, right? So there was a period where I did radio. There was a period where I tried video and did some YouTube. There was a period where I wrote a blog. That was a couple of years, which helped me massively in terms of like writing. And on of those kind of three things, when I started creating content for my role in at Sales Loft, I kind of realized, oh, wait a second, I'm using the skills from like kind of video editing days when I did radio. Okay, yeah, so like constantly thinking of features and ideas, and then the writing side of things. Obviously, writing content on LinkedIn is still so popular. It was kind of only then that I realized, oh, I'm using all of those skills. So yeah, I've always tried to keep my toe in the water when it comes to being creative, but I've never had the opportunity to go all in until I joined Sales Loft.
Interesting. So my next question then, because I didn't know that you were a radio guy, This is something I hear all the time from people who don't want to get into content is they talk about hating the sound of their own voice. They listen, they record the podcast, they make the video, they watch it, and they hate the sound of themselves so much that they can't do it.
Yeah.
And I want to know, is that something you ever dealt with? Were you early on able to think of your voice as kind of a tool that you are dispassionate about? Or did you have to go through this period of like, I don't like how I look, I don't like how I sound, and then somehow you got over it?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of soul crushing self-confidence that, you know, people tend to, they don't have in them. And if I could just give it to people, I would, because I believe it's a superpower. You know, that's not something I've always had. And even to this day, and I'm sure, Chris, you're the same, you listen to a piece of content back or a recording, and you kind of, you know, you cringe a little bit and I wish I didn't quite sound like that. You know, I'm from the north of England and I've got quite a nasal way of speaking. And often I'll listen back to content and hello, everyone. You know, it's those demons, they live in you every day. You know, you think, who cares? I don't sound like everybody else. I don't look like I'm just not going to forget it. That's not for me. I believe you play the cards you've been dealt, right? If you're bald with a ginger beard and you've got a nasal accent, well, those are the cards that you have been dealt. And what are you going to do? Give in, not play the game? No, you're going to have a seat at the table, right? And actually, those insecurities, they are all in your head. And the amount of people who post a video and they'll say, I'm sorry about my eyebrow, you know, or they'll say, excuse my cardigan, or, you know, whatever it might be. And then you like draw the audience to some obscure, oh, what is wrong with her eyebrow? You know, just put yourself out there, play the cards you've been dealt. I can't promote that enough because, you know, I'm a big champion of that. And I think if I could give that passion to everyone today, I would, you know.
Yeah. So here's an idea that helped me with that. I learned, because my background, I don't know if you know anything about me, Tom, but I did a lot of stuff at Chicago's Second City. So I was a sketch comedy and improv guy. I spent a lot of time in the booth. So I was not in the show. I was writing it and I was directing it. But there was a cast of actors who were performing the things I wrote, you know. And I learned over time that the main character is not who the audience loves the best. The main character is central to the story and everything is about their hero's journey, but that's not the character the audience likes the best. There's a reason why Netflix has a picture of the villain when you scroll through and you're choosing a show. And I learned in improv that actually the audience's absolute favorite character is the character that comes on stage for 10 seconds, has one line, gets a huge laugh, and then just walks off. That's who the audience loves. And I'm like, you can be that. The audience doesn't want you to be the main character because they are the main character, you know? But if you come on and for that one moment of the day they see you, you're just a little bit more delightful, or you're a little bit more fun, or maybe you're a little bit more helpful, or a little bit more educational. You could be that minor character who makes their day, you know, where it's like, that was so good. I hope I see that again. And that's what you learn in the improv show is like when you've got that walk-on character who's great, that's how you end the show. You've got that bullet in the chamber. And you know, we bring that character back on. It's going to get another huge laugh. You can hit the lights. It's not the main character. It's not the main character they're looking at, you know? And once I started thinking about like, how could I be the most impactful minor character in everybody's day? All of a sudden I had all this freedom. And all of a sudden, all these weird quirks that I had that made me self-conscious because I'm not the guy who's, you know, the main character. All of a sudden, I was able to build an audience and people were paying me to do voiceover work and sponsored content and all this stuff. And it was like, I had to just accept that, I am kind of a weirdo side character.
But you have to play. You have to play to your strengths, right? And if we take that
Yeah.
to like a LinkedIn POV, if you're looking at these influencers and you're thinking, "Well, I could never do that, or I could never be that, or I don't sound like that, or look like that," well, good, because be the version of yourself and that you want to make yourself proud of by putting yourself out there and not try to be anybody else. And I think that's so important to get right as well. Whether you're going to look at comedy or just creating content, you can't be anything but yourself.
All right. Well, I want to talk to you about your face, Tom.
Okay.
Because this is something. So this is something that one of my friends, who's a creator, he's a very successful creator. He's built like this multi-million-dollar content empire on YouTube and TikTok. The best advice he ever gave me is he told me sometimes the funniest joke is me just looking at the camera going. And he's like, it doesn't have to be this profound, brilliant thing. The way you look at the camera is its own joke. And 90% of acting is just having an interesting face, So I love your content, and when we made our sketch together, it was very funny because just the way you look at the camera, just the way you interact with the camera, and it's not all just making funny faces. It's oftentimes the funniest setups, the funniest comedy formulas are a straight man and a funny person. And when you do multiple characters like you and I do, you have to cast yourself as both. And like when you play that straight-laced character who just looks no nonsense, but you're in a ridiculous situation, that's so funny, So how did you learn how to use your face on camera? And is that something you consciously think about a lot as you're performing?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that we're talking about facial expressions because I am a very expressive person, and I'm like that with my kids, and I've always had an expressive face. I wanted to create two characters, right? So I had a sales leader and a seller. One of the ways to make those two characters look a bit different was a hat, right? It was just the hat that I wore to work that day. I didn't really think I was creating a costume, but that ended up being his hat for 5 years. And his face when he wears the hat, the sales leader, is often kind of eyebrows down and everything's very serious, right? Because it's it's an important week this week, okay? And this quarter's an important quarter. We have to hit target and we're in sales. Whereas the seller, right, who always has a headset on, his eyebrows are often up because he's a bit naive, right? And he's worried about hitting target, and there's sadness in his eyes, right? And often he has a kind of gormless smile on his face, as he's not quite sure how he landed in this kind of sales role. That seller was me, basically, on my first few months of my very first sales role, right? Just trying to kind of figure out what the hell is going on. And the face of the sales leader was every bad sales leader that I've ever had, right? Who's kind of like straight down the line. But I agree with you. I think facial expressions are funny, and often I will in a scene of a sketch, I will just give a little kind of look to the camera, as if to break the fourth wall and say, what is going on? I think that there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too. Anybody at home, if you were listening and thinking like, how can I get funnier? I am a big believer in acting classes, and I don't think it's a coincidence that you were a theater major. And like when I was a director, if I had to choose between two actors, and one was a really funny improviser, but they couldn't act, and one was a really good actor, but they had never improvised before, I would take the actor. Because the way I looked at it is I am writing the jokes. I don't need the actor to come up with the jokes. I am writing the jokes. And what I need is somebody who can buy into the reality of it, So I can make a ridiculous situation, but what's going to make it funny is, can I have a human being who actually acts like a real person would, who accepts the gravity of what's happening, because then the audience identifies with them. And Yeah, it's like reacting is reacting.
I think that's really important when we're talking about like sketch comedy, right? Because often people will ask me about that and how I kind of perform that. But I agree with you. I believe what's happening, right? If I'm talking to Kevin over there, I can see Kevin, right? I know that he he exists. If I'm pretending to look at the CRM and looking disappointed, I can visualize it, right? I can sort of sell it. And I think that's when comedy does well, when it feels kind of real. And we talked about that at the top of the show, but then you've also got that kind of absurdity in there too.
Yeah, it's funny because in Chicago, they literally say, wear your character as lightly as you would a hat that you can discard at a moment's notice. It's a character that's 99% you, but then you take one little aspect and you exaggerate it to comic proportion.
Yeah.
Everybody, we are here with Tom Boston today. We are talking about You're Kind of Funny. And Tom, it looks like it's time for Gimme Gimme. You want to do Gimme Gimme?
Let's do it. I've been looking forward to this bit.
All right. Well, we're going to take a moment here. This is something we do once every episode. You see, there's a misconception that I have noticed on LinkedIn. I see a lot of influencers out there, and they talk about how it's not about how much you make. It's about selflessly giving away value. It's about creating lifelong friendships. And here at this show, we know that's not what LinkedIn is actually about, right? LinkedIn is actually the only social network that was created so its users could make more money. That's right. It was made so you could upload your resume, so you could get higher paying jobs, find better employees. And that's why once every episode, I like to get into character, and my guests and I like to ask my audience for exactly what it is we want from them. So, Tom, you want to do Gimme Gimme?
Yes. Let's
Here we
go
go
for it.
Hello! Welcome to another episode of Gimme Gimme, the part of the show where I ask you for money. Tom Boston, my audience is here. They have money. They're watching you. What do you want from them?
Well, I want them, of course, to head over to tomboston.social, right? Make sure, I'm going to be as aggressive as you. Make sure that you get it right, tomboston.social, because right there, you can book some LinkedIn training with me, level up your skills, and get your team influencing, bringing in deals, flying the flag for your organization, and smashing it online.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the majority of LinkedIn training out there, folks, but it is dog shit. Absolute dog shit, okay? You got to check out Tom Boston. He's actually out there. Not only is he doing the LinkedIn content creation thing, he has been in sales for years. He's a man who actually knows what he's doing. There are very few people who can do the comedy thing and the sales thing and the LinkedIn influencer thing. Tom Boston is one of them. TomBoston.social? Is it?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, go check out Tom. By the way, while you're here, why don't you check out today's wonderful sponsors? Too. So there seems to be some misconceptions out there from the audience. It seems to be everybody thinks they're just supposed to show up and watch the funny ads. Make no mistake, folks. If I am selling you products, I expect you to fucking buy it. Okay? So take out your phone, scan the QR codes on the screen, and you're in luck. Because today we have two fantastic sponsors, and you don't even need to pay anything to enjoy their wonderful products. So we've got TLDV, which is the AI meetings assistant. It is way cheaper than most of the alternatives you know out there, and it's amazing because it compiles AI summaries based on all the programs you use to meet with your team. So Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Meets, it monitors everything you're doing and compiles summaries so you're only dealing with the most important information for your team. Best of all, you can try it free. So go ahead, scan the QR code or go to tldv.io to try it free today. But hey, maybe you don't have a team, right? Or maybe you already have some sort of AI meeting assistant, and that's not interesting to you. We've got another great sponsor today. We've got pitchfire.com, all right? I'm sick and tired of hearing people bitch about how they get pitched by people on LinkedIn. Yeah, welcome to owning a business, folks. That's never going to go away. Instead of crying about it, why don't you go to pitchfire.com and get paid for it? Because pitchfire.com is the only service that pays you to respond to salespeople. All right, so you can make extra money, learn a little bit about what you're doing wrong, and help out the sponsors of this show. So go ahead, scan the QR code, check out pitchfire.com so you can get paid today. Tom Boston, what else do you have for my audience?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great if you headed over to my LinkedIn profile right now, because I'm going to be, doing all sorts of exciting things over the next few weeks, which I can't yet reveal, but it's going to be exciting. So bloody get over there and do it.
Listen to the man, all right? You don't know what he's going to do.
Don't mess with me. I could go on on a rampage, if not.
Yeah, I don't even want to know what that entails, all right? But check out Tom Boston on LinkedIn. Follow me. I've got a course, too. We'll be seeing that right now, I guess. This has been Gimme Gimme. Iggy, roll the tape.
Hello? Is this Mr. Sherbert?
It sure is. What can I help you with, brother?
Hello. You were not expecting this call. Do you have 17 seconds to
Hang
learn
on a
about
second.
Mercifully Short?
Is this a cold call?
I don't know.
You. Never call this number again.
Oh no! Another unsuccessful cold call. You probably don't have time to fuck off.
I got a quota to hit.
Are you spending hours every week cold calling and cold emailing but not seeing results?
There's gotta be a better way.
Introducing the complete guide to selling on video. Whether you're new to sales or a President's Club member, this fast and fun course will teach you to efficiently create short, customized videos that get results. The complete guide to selling on video is not sold in stores. Visit chrisbogue.io and use promo code GimmeGimme to take $50 off while supplies last. Don't delay. Get noticed today.
And we're back with Tom Boston. He and I are talking about comedy, the creative process, how to make funny videos, how to play multiple characters, going deep on it. Go ahead and drop a comment if you got questions for Tom. And we're going to talk a little bit about vulnerability here. So, you're a funny guy. You're not always funny, though. Sometimes you post about things that are serious and personal to you. So let's talk about that. So, how do you feel when you share something personal? Is it scarier than sharing something funny? Or what is your thought process on when you want to let the audience in on something that maybe is emotionally vulnerable for you to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I've always looked at it as humanizing yourself, right? So in the same way that I didn't want to just create content about my solution, right, and just fire that in people's faces, I didn't want to just create comedy and fire that in people's faces, right? I think about it like a networking event. If you were at a networking event and there was a guy just telling jokes, right, for the entire event, I don't think I would like that guy, right? Maybe after the 5th or 6th joke, okay, mate, just give it a rest. That's enough of the jokes. Similarly, if there was someone just pitching their products all the time, okay, buy the product, I would probably leave that person alone. So I've been kind of very aware of going, look, I don't want to kind of do that to people. I want people to, from my content, get to know a bit more about me, my family, my kind of life away from comedy and sales, and kind of being vulnerable was the way for me to do that. I think people appreciate it, and that's what I found. I think people like to see both sides. People like to see not just the polished facade that you might create. Actually, who are you? What are you about? What matters to you? Those things are really important for me to share.
Yeah. Well, I would say too, even if you are 100% focused on comedy, the vulnerability is an important ingredient in there. You know, um, So I'm the type of person. Tom, has anybody ever told you this? I was a person growing up where I would get very mad about something, and people would be like, they'd start laughing at me, and I would be like, "What?" And they're like, "You're funny when you're mad." And it's like, it's the most aggravating thing to tell somebody who's angry that they're funny when they're angry. But this is something that happened all throughout my life. My dad would tell me, he would tell the same story a million times about how we were at a family party. I was like 4 years old. I found a jar of M&Ms, and he had told me no more M&Ms. I found where the adults had hid the jar of M&Ms. And the adults all got together because they noticed me in the corner of the room. And I would just be sitting there, like looking around nervously. And then when I thought no one was looking, I would take them and I would be sitting over there and I would be eating the M&Ms and like glancing. And the adults thought it was so funny because they could see my eyes darting around, and they would talk about these stupid M&Ms for years, and it would make me so angry. And then I learned as I got older that actually the funniest moments happen when someone is trying not to be funny. And like, part of the best way for me to be funny sometimes is not to go into the situation acting really silly. Sometimes going in there as somebody who's heartbroken, or somebody who's earnest, or somebody who's in love, somebody who is vulnerable, somebody who's frightened, that can be really funny. And I always compared myself to people who were like funnier jokesmiths than me. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got this sappy, these like sad blue eyes that I use all the time, but I'm not funny like my stand-up comedy friends are. And then like actually sometimes putting me in a situation where I just look like I'm going to cry and someone cuts me down to size, that can be very funny, you know? So I know you summon that when you were doing your multiple characters. Do you ever like, that part of you that wants to be the overly eager salesperson, who's got that cheerful smile and is nervous because he wants to do a good job. Tell me about the heartbreak that goes into faithfully playing a character like that.
Well, again, I think there's something fundamentally funny about a sensitive guy who's in a kind of corporate world and has got a quota to hit and feels quite sad about his life choices. Right? And again, let's talk about 99% truth. There's a lot of me in that, right? That was me a few years ago. I used to work at the Apple store in Newcastle, and I loved that job. That was a great job, because if I made people happy whilst selling them an iPad, my manager would say, "Great job, Tom. You are fantastic." And I would feel good about myself. And I would go home and I would say, "I've had a great day today." I was just being silly, selling some iPads, right? There's no targets at Apple. You hit your target, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about that, because it's all about the NPS score, right? It's all about what your customer feels when they leave. And I was always good at making people feel good. I think that that's just something we should all be doing more of. Then I get this corporate job selling utilities because we've got a wedding to pay for and they're very expensive. And things changed very, very rapidly, right? I'm in a tie for the first time. I've got real trousers on. I'm not wearing jeans anymore. I've got these shiny shoes, and I don't like the product that I'm selling. Everyone around me really wants to make a load of money. They were really driven by money, which I was never that person. And it was the worst time of my life, right? I would come home with a headache, make 100 calls. The worst time ever. But it was only after years later where I could look back and go, that's hilarious. There's something so funny about a guy who is, hey everyone, my name's Tom and I like to make people happy. How many calls have you made? How many contracts have you sold? Get on the phones. How many, what time are you closing that deal? Well, I don't know. There's something funny in that. And I look back at those times and go, okay, I'm going to bring that in to my my content. So often this vulnerable character that I'm playing, Barry, it's just me. It's me in 2018, 2017, 2018, selling utilities and being told every day to F off. There's something funny about that.
No, Mel Brooks has my favorite quote on this. Mel Brooks said, "Tragedy is when I get a paper cut on my finger. Comedy is when you fall down a sewer and die." And I'm like, yeah, that is. When something happens to you, it's very serious. And when you watch something terrible happen to somebody else, there's something kind of funny about it. And that's why I love, and I when I do give notes to people on their LinkedIn comedy, which who the hell makes LinkedIn comedy? So this doesn't happen all the time, but people do come to me sometimes because they're making LinkedIn content. And the mistake I will see people run into sometimes is they want to have the smart character who's right, and then like the irrational character that's wrong. And I'm like, actually, it's a lot funnier when either both characters are intelligent or both characters are idiots. But like, I love it when it is like the worst boss ever and the worst employee ever. And like both their incentives are leading them to ruin. And it's like, that is funny for the audience. And the quote I was told when I was doing comedy in Chicago is, audiences want to see something that is one hair away from disaster, where it just looks like it could fall apart any moment, because they love to be like, glad that's not me, And if I'm going to make a sketch about cold calling, I can put myself in the worst, most humiliating, most doomed cold call ever. And the audience laughs at that because then they don't have to laugh at how badly their cold call went. They're like, well, at least it wasn't that, But it's like, yeah, you gotta like, there's a lot of comedy in tragedy, and I would argue that crying and laughing physiologically are not that different. Those are both the two nonverbal ways human beings say, "Don't hurt me, please don't hurt me." We laugh because otherwise we would cry. So yeah, let me go. I want to go one deeper into this idea of playing multiple characters. So, oh wait, that's the wrong one. So, tell me about your characters. So it's Barry and Larry.
Yeah, I never really named my sales manager, right? I had my seller who always has his headset on. I called him Barry just because I thought it was quite a silly name. And the manager who wears a flat cap, he was unnamed until recently. I decided to call him Larry just because, again, let's have Barry and Larry. And like you say, I've been playing those characters now for years on LinkedIn.
So I assume that now, I mean, for some context, everybody, so Tom was working at SalesLoft. Today was his last day. So someone made a joke that I thought was funny. They're like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if SalesLoft owned the rights to Larry and Barry and you were not allowed to play those characters? And then they recast those characters with an actor that wasn't you. I assume we have not seen the last of them yet.
Yeah, I mean, I almost hope that happens, because I think that might be one of the funniest things ever if there is a new
they just recast it.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same with the flat cap. I can't say too much, but they might They might be back. That was the original line in Terminator until they changed it. Yeah, and
I might be back.
They might be back.
So I play a lot of characters. Everybody has seen, if anybody was watching my stupid fake ads, Dr. Funkenstein, Boss Bogue. I've got probably over a dozen or over 20 different characters here. So like, how did you find were there multiple takes of these characters, or how did you eventually nail these characters down?
Well, I just recently shared, I mean, you mentioned that it's my last day at Sales Loft. I shared today one of the very first videos I made, which was a split screen video between Larry and Barry having a FaceTime call about making LinkedIn content. And again, the hat was just to kind of separate those two characters. Over time, that kind of evolved to go, well, maybe they could have conversations with each other, right? And those turned into Zoom calls throughout lockdown. A lot of my content in COVID was Barry and Larry on a Zoom call, and that was as simple as recording something with a hat on, moving to a different part of my house, taking the hat off, and recording something else and putting those two things together. I didn't really overthink it. It's only more recently that I've kind of tried to put them in the same room with each other and tried to get a bit cleverer with the editing, and also trying to make them different people through kind of mannerisms, right? Larry's voice is a bit lower, and it always will be, right? You're gonna hit target. Barry is a bit more softly spoken, and just kind of mixing that up a little bit, just to make it feel like it's two different people having a conversation, rather than just he's put a hat on now, or it get confusing for the audience, right? Who are you playing now? I think it's really important to make it crystal clear. Okay, that's that character, and that's that character. And I know you do that with props and ties and hats and wigs, whatever it might be. You have to make it clear who your characters are.
Yeah, I was always taught like it's how the character's acting. You know, you talk about your two characters. There's in improv we talk about high status characters and low status characters. Each of those has different attributes to them. So like high status characters tend to speak in a lower pitch. Low status characters speak a lot faster. Low status characters apologize a lot. Low status characters move around a lot. There's a lot of unnecessary movement. When you're a high status character, people come to you. You don't move to them. They come to you. There's all sorts of things you can do. So I'll ask myself, like, is this a high status character or is this a low status character? It's funny because I have the boss character, and I people don't realize because I play him. That's a very old timey boss character. You know, that's an old timey kind of like vaudeville, like cigar chomping character. It's an old timey boss character mixed with every sales boss I've ever had, mixed with a little bit of Donald Trump, just the parts of Donald Trump that are funny. And that's Boss Bogue. What people don't realize, when I first started off, there is a rejected version of Boss Bogue that was nothing like that. I tried an early version that was a Mark Zuckerberg impression.
Okay.
It was me with a hoodie, and I was very distracted, and I owned 7 different companies, and I didn't know any of my employees' names, and I didn't remember what the company I was working for did. And that was just a thing I tried. You know, and I looked at the two of them and I was like, oh, the old timey guy is so much funnier. It's so much funnier. I'm going to go with that. But I had to kind of objectively, like, this is where my history as a director comes in. You know, I had to kind of look at those two digital versions of myself and say objectively, which one of these is funnier? And I'm going to go with that. And one thing that I do that I recommend all my guests do that I learned from other actors is, you know, whenever I'm going to read a part, I do 3 different takes of the line. You know, I'll say, Boston, I'll say, Boston, get into my office right now. Or Boston, get into my office right now. I'll try 3 different takes so I can sit there and be like, that's the one that works, or that's the one that feels real. And oftentimes I have found that the biggest take is not the funniest one. I almost never use the one that's the most energetic. It's almost always something subtle, a little subtlety about how the person reacts to something around them. Those little subtle moments are what the audience loves. And the cameras really pick up on that. When you're in HD, you can see all these little tiny movements of the eyes and of the mouth. But it's like, I have to like actually look at the video and sit there and think to myself, like, which of these 3 makes me laugh the hardest? And then I'm going to bet that that's what my audience likes too.
Yeah, well, I was working with someone recently, and we were filming some reaction shots, and I said to her, just look at me like you hate me. Right, because the first shot that we got was her looking kind of like really dramatic, right, with her eyes kind of big, and it didn't look real. And I said, just look at me like you're disgusted with me. And she gave me this perfect look, and I was like, that's the one. We'll use that one. You don't have to do something that's overly comical. You can just draw on something that's real to you, because that's what people will relate to.
Yes, it is not, and that is the thing too that I've got a question about this that I'm going to pull up here because I want to talk to you about point of view. How do you find your point? I'm going to confess to everybody. I usually print out my thing beforehand. My printer is broken today, and I'm so frustrated because I do everything on physical paper, and it's driving me nuts. So I'm going to ask you this question, then I'm going to put the question up on screen because I'm going to go find it. But tell me about how you come up with original ideas. Are you ever tempted to steal ideas from other people? What do you think about stealing somebody else's idea versus finding your own premises? How do you think of those questions?
You should be stealing ideas all the time, right? And I'm a big believer in that. There's not a lot of original ideas out there, right? And if you manage to think of one, then you're on the big money, right? But the best piece of advice is to take what other people are doing and put your own spin on it. So I'll give you an example. The split screen FaceTime call that we just referenced and that I posted today, which I filmed in 2019, I'd seen something similar on Twitter. In 2018, there was a guy who was doing split screen conversations between himself. Nothing to do with sales, nothing to do with B2B. It just was skits where he would, I think, pretend to be his internal thoughts or something like that. And I remember watching it going, oh, that's interesting. He's filmed himself twice and put them together. Maybe I could do something like that, right? I stole a small idea from a different platform, brought it over to LinkedIn, and often I'm credited for, oh, you're the split screen guy. You're the guy who speaks to himself, and you were.
No, I invented that, Tom.
Oh, did you? Did I get that from you?
I was the guy that thought of doing comedy.
It was me. I had the idea.
Everyone's copying me.
This is my point. There are no original ideas. You just have to put your own spin on things, right? So whether you're going to see something that Chris does or I do or someone does, how can you put your own flavor onto that? And I like to, draw from all sorts of walks of life. If I'm watching, for example, an episode of The Office, one of my favorite programs, I'll think, well, maybe this week I'll do like a talking head, sort of The Office style interview, because I've been inspired by seeing that on TV, so like, do steal ideas, but put your own spin on it. There's this new trend now, which is, have you seen this, Chris? Inspired by. I don't know how I feel about this. You basically take someone's
steal it, and then you
say, and you steal it.
you bury it at the bottom. So they got to click see
yeah.
more and scroll all the way down. Yeah, I so like comedians are notoriously not fans of plagiarism, and like I definitely think there is a difference between being inspired by a bit and outright stealing it. I have had people steal bits from me before, and or steal like they'll steal the name of my show, or they'll steal the name of an episode or something like that. And I'm like, guys, you can just tag me in the post. That would be fine. If you're like, hey, Chris Bogue did this, we're gonna give him a tag. That's fine. But yeah, it is true that there is nothing new under the sun, and so people want to like if people take a look at some of the sketches they've seen throughout the show, like that commercial I did, that infomercial for my course. You know how I made that was I went to Google and I typed in 20 greatest infomercials of the 1990s. And I found a playlist, and I sat there with a notebook, and I wrote down every single thing they did that was funny or strange. And by the end of it, I had a list of like 20 or 30 things. And I'm like, okay, which of these can I do? Like the fact that the narrator comes in and goes, oh no, that's a thing that someone did in some commercial from like 1992. I'm like, the narrator saying, oh no, as the guys is the funniest thing ever. So I'm going to have this shitty situation, and you're not going to know there's a narrator there until he goes, oh no, you probably don't have time to like that. And again, it's like, somebody else, that was a thing that somebody else did, but me being like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if I put that in this context where the guy's on a cold call and then the narrator does it, and then it somehow kind of turns into its own thing.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the fake commercial where I'm like, I've got to make sponsored content. I have to disclose that this is an ad. So wouldn't it be funny if it was a guy who looks like a doctor? His name is Dr. Funkenstein. He dresses like a doctor. He looks like a doctor. It's literally flashing, not a doctor, on the screen. And he goes, let me tell you about the first thing you learn in med school. And then it's just it just feels like a pharmaceutical ad, even down to the list of horrific side effects and fine print at the end. But it's selling my video prospecting course, you know.
I like that the end of the video where the terms and conditions are being read out was the majority of the video. I quite liked that.
Yeah, and again, it's like necessity is the mother of invention. So as soon as I watch one of those ads, and I'm like, oh God, I've got to have the giant, overly long, sped up intro. I'm like, okay, how do I do that? How do I speed up the audio so it maintains the same pitch? And it's like, once you know what you are parodying, then you figure out how to do it. You can look up the tutorial of like, how do you speed up audio? How do you do this and that? But again, it all started with like, oh, okay, what if I did a fake ad? You look up some of them and you're like, okay, there's 60 different funny things that happen there. I bet if I put 3 of them into the video, those will be recognizable enough to where my audience will get a kick out of it.
Yeah, I like that.
Excellent. Well, Tom, I could sit here and talk to you all day, but you probably have to sleep and be done with work at some point, right?
Yeah, and we're heading into the weekend here, and as a father, that means that it's the worst time of the week because that's the crazy part. But let's do it. This is what life's all about.
Excellent. Well, if you want to see more from Tom Boston, go ahead, scan the QR code on the screen, connect with him on LinkedIn, check out all his work. It's one of those things where it's like you can really tell who's half-assing it out there and who's actually trying to come up with interesting things that actually respect the audience's intelligence. And you can always count on Tom for that. So, Tom, thank you very much for being on the show today.
I appreciate that. That's very nice.
Thank you. And big thanks again to today's sponsors. So thank you once again to TLDV and Pitchfire. So TLDV is the AI meetings assistant. You can try it free today. Scan the QR code or go to tldv.io. Do not underestimate the power of transcripts and summaries and knowing exactly what's important in your sales calls. Check out TLDV and also check out Pitchfire. It's at pitchfire.com. get paid to respond to salespeople, learn about where the mistakes are happening in your process, or get feedback on your tech product. So check out pitchfire.com, scan the QR code. Thank you very much, everybody. Tune in next week. We will be back with another episode of Death by PowerPoint with special guest Ben Gould.